Now, Martin, I must admit, I was fully expecting to be sitting here this morning saying he's a Chelsea player, and it hasn't happened. He stays. You've seen him at close quarters, no doubt, working the last season. I mean, how significant is this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very significant that they've. We know they haven't really bought anybody in the summer, but it's imperative that now that Zahara's gone, that they pin, something on this player, because I do believe he's an incredible talent, Jim. If we looked at the end of last season when they pretty well put Leeds down, he had 3 assists. I think he's the youngest player to do that in the Premier League. This guy is top draw. We saw him at Reading coming through the academy. He was the EFL Young Player of the Year in 2021. His debut, Jim, he was a slow burner, I'd have to say, but now he's been quite magnificent. So without Zaha being there, you can see they always like to pin something on real talent. They got him for $8.5 million. Yes, there's a clause now. They protected themselves. Interestingly, he didn't play at the weekend, so he's there, very available. He's still very young, Jim, and he's as a young player, he was at, believe it or not, he was at Arsenal, he was at Chelsea, he was at Man City.
Yeah.
And maybe he just feels he needs a little bit longer. He's only played 67 games for Palace.
Sure.
120 games in total. He's still very young. He's still yearning. He's French. He's born in England. I think there still might be a chance he can play for the 21s for England. I don't know where that's going to happen, because Gareth likes that total commitment, doesn't he? Tell me you're English.
Yeah.
And there's a doubt there. He's a fantastic talent.
I mean, Simon, is this a situation where a young player like Olise has been well advised?
Listen, he looks like a brand new player for Palace, doesn't he? I mean, ultimately, if one was cynical, one would suggest that Palace haven't signed any players and ultimately have now managed to engineer a situation where they look like they signed a brand new player. But the bottom line is that I'm not surprised at either which way, because I don't know why he would be going to Chelsea at this stage in his career, because you're going into an environment where there are so many players in a similar position that are ahead of him. And so he's in a situation where I don't think he would have gotten into Chelsea's team as a matter of course as a starting lineup player, so he'd have been part of a squad. He is a very good player. He's a long way away from being a world beater, but he's a very good player. And I'm not surprised that Palace have been able to engineer. Dougie Freedman is a very capable operator, and so he would have been spending an inordinate amount of time making sure that this boy was listening to sense. My view, this time next year he'll be gone. But right now, in the here and now, because obviously Roy Hodgson was very unhappy and almost speaking out of school about what he was sold in terms of taking on the job against what he may be left with, which was certainly the disappointment of accepting Wilfried Zaha going out the door, but no acceptance of the fact that someone else was going out the door.
But what's your take on Palace seemingly got into a mood that they're going to tough it out with Chelsea? Because there were reports that Chelsea's pursuit of Olise had aggravated Palace officials. They thought a line was crossed in the conduct regards attempting to sign a player. You and I know what that means. Whether it's true or not, get onto Olise, see if he wants to join us. Get into his head, see if he wants to come to Chelsea.
I don't want to pitch it into another one of my broadsides of the media, but sometimes what the media report in terms of the characterisation of a deal are often vastly different. When we got relegated from the Premier League, I was told emphatically through the media that Andrew Johnson was gone, right? And he was nowhere near gone. Right, and it was nowhere near across the information. It was somehow often they fly a kite, and if that kite goes somewhere, then they look like they've been very intuitive, and often it doesn't.
You don't think it was maybe one of Johnson's representatives?
And it may well be. It may well be that they're utilised, but that's not the same thing as having an integrity behind the actual information. That's the media being utilised by an agent. That's the media being used as a conduit for an agent to achieve an outcome. And in this instance, what you've got is a player that had a £35 million release clause, and Palace really have done what they should have been able to do. They've got the boy in the building. They've got him under contract. Now, of course, the release clause causes them a problem. That's the problem that they've got, which is the release clause causes a challenge which takes it out of their hands. And somehow or another, I would imagine by a series of sensible thinking, structuring a new deal.
Would you have wanted more than 35 million as a release clause?
Well, if I'd have wanted more than 35 million quid as a release clause, I should have stuck it there in the bleeding beginning, shouldn't I? The point is that I've got what I've got. Now what I've probably got is a bigger release clause. I've now got the ability to go into the player, give him a nice little pay rise, give him an understanding that if we get a deal this time next year, that's more in keeping with what Palace would like to see their players valued at, that he will have the opportunity to go again. He's going to play in the side. He's going to play regularly. The team's going to be half built around him being a mainstay, and all of those things will give this young man an opportunity to be an even bigger catch in a year's time.
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, Rob, one of the listeners, is saying, Simon, you know, will there be a new release clause in the contract? Well, there will be, and it'll be more than 35 million.
I would have thought so.
Yeah,
I would have thought.
But you still think it'll go this time next season?
I would have thought that Palace would have engineered something that gave them a little bit more traction on a bigger price tag, but not too much that the player didn't want to sign a new deal with them. Because if Palace suddenly turned around and said we want an £80 million release clause, then that's going to be a deterrent to lots of other football clubs.
I mean, but also, Jim, his wages would have been transformational, wouldn't they? Because there was reports that Zaha was, you know, the one player that was earning over £100,000 a week at that football club, and I think maybe Olise is obviously taking over that contract.
He was on £130,000 a week, and when his contract came to expire, Wilfred, there was an offer of significantly more than that.
Yeah.
Because the cost implications of replacing him in a transfer fee didn't make the sense commercially.
I mean, the dial has switched actually, Simon, to earlier in the week when we were putting it out there to Palace fans. Now listen, of Zaha, Olise, and Eze, which of the three would you be least bothered about? I would have thought Zaha would be the answer here, and he's the one they've lost. They're going to hold on to Olise, and they look like they're going to hold on to Eze, so it's not bad.
But Zaha was priced into their thinking a while ago because they knew he was coming into the last year of his contract. They would have known for some time that there was a distinct possibility that Zaha was going to be
but
going.
He wasn't the
of course,
future.
Jim, he was a very good servant for the club.
And neither was Olise.
He played over 450 games for Palace. You could say he
gone.
carried the club for a long period, Jim, so let's not be disrespectful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of contribution that he made to that football club from the day he stepped back in the door in 2013 to the day he left.
Never got his big move, though. In the English Premier League, never got his big move. Arsenal never happened.
Well, you say that. He went to Manchester United, didn't he? But
as a kid,
yeah, but then maybe that created some question marks. And he felt, you know, maybe that he wanted to stay, and he was a very good servant for Palace.
I mean, the tragedy for Wilfred Zaha is that when he moved to Manchester United, he was Alex Ferguson's last signing, and the change of culture at Manchester United, he got caught in the crosshairs. Now, I don't think he went up there in particularly the right frame of mind and as professional as he could have done. And if he'd have gone 2 or 3 years later, then we would have seen a different outcome. But there is no doubt in my mind, not just because the boy came out of my academy and I've known him since he was a young man, but because I know the talent. And the only reason he didn't go to Arsenal was because Palace wanted to hold the line. They wanted 60 million quid. So Arsenal went and bought Nicolas Pepe for 70 million quid. Talk to me about that conversation, compare and contrast, because Zaha would have done a significantly better job.
Yeah, but if they'd really wanted him, they would have gone to that money.
Well, the reasons why they didn't do that is because...
Like, they really wanted Declan, so they went to that money.
Different timing, different outlook.
Maybe it was whoever was in charge of recruitment at that point.
But also, it was also at that time, because Arsenal were able to pay Pepe on the drip. They were able to do a deal where they could pay it over 4 or 5 years. So it became a cost implication. Whereas Palace would have turned around and said, "You want our best player? You pay for it. You pay top money for it. And you pay it on the nil."
Yeah.
And now the culture's changed. Ever since the European Super League, the attitude from Stan Kroenke has been completely different. Completely different.
Okay. So Olise stays. Will Zaha is in Istanbul.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.